All right, welcome to another episode of Share Your Story with Chet. I am actually excited today because I have Anne who's joining us. Uh, a very unique profile, I have to say, for Anne. She's a collaborator, programmer, she's a mentor, networker. She loves live music. I know that for a fact. And she's a DJ, which is so awesome. Things I actually discovered about her while I was reading and things I didn't know. She was an associate producer at the Adelaide Festival. She's also the chair of Music SA in South Australia, which is amazing. With 25 years of experience behind her, running different things at management levels and events and producing festivals and consultancies and her own business as well. I think it's going to be an amazing story just to know more things about you, because the kind of people that I normally interact with at this point of time are from normal businesses, and I've had interactions with musicians. I've lived with musicians before when I was in Fiji in China for a while. So I have a little insight into the back end when they're practicing and how things go. It's not easy, but it's a different life. It's a free lifestyle where you decide where to go next and what happens, I guess, in many ways, and who to communicate with. So yeah, I am just very, very curious to know more about you. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to let you introduce yourself a little bit, and then we'll start on to sort of discovering a bit about you, man.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me, Chet. Very exciting opportunity to talk about me. I've had a very diverse life, I suppose, both in my career, but also just in my life, because I was a migrant that moved to Adelaide when I was only 14, or moved to Australia when I was 14. But I've always believed that, opportunities that Australia has given me especially have been amazing. So I feel very grateful for the life that I've had. And I've kind of been in the music and the arts world all my life, because my father was a pianist, a professional touring pianist, and my mum was a cabaret dancer. So I was brought up in a family that was all about music and the arts anyway. So I was kind of destined to kind of move towards that as a career. Eventually, although out of the 4 siblings, I'm the only one that's actually pursued the arts as a career.
Right.
So even with the same parents, it doesn't always mean that you end up doing what you're expected to be doing. So I worked in the arts, but I have had a bit of a life in the corporate world as well, which was great. But I always knew that really the arts was kind of my home. And that's where I feel more comfortable. And after 15 years as a social worker, I came back to the arts 20 plus years ago, and I haven't left really. So I'm very happy to be where I am.
That's awesome. And did you sort of, your artistic journey towards music, programming and everything started in Australia, or was it somewhere else? Was it when you moved to Australia, this whole journey started?
I was already studying piano in Finland when I was quite young, like pretty much primary school age. But then when I moved to Australia, I really kind of pursued music as a study that I wanted to take seriously, because when we moved to Australia, we moved to the Riverland. And if in the Riverland in high school, you're not into sport, you have to be into the arts or music or singing musicals, because it was very hard to fit in. I was hopeless at sport of any kind. So music was luckily something I can really take seriously. And right through high school, I was in the orchestra and ensembles and sang in musicals and got involved on that level. And that's actually when I lost my accent. People say I don't speak with an accent anymore. And that's because I wanted to sound like an Aussie girl.
Right.
I didn't want to stand out as a migrant. So I wanted to, fit in. And music and doing drama and singing kind of helped, I suppose, to just blend in a bit more.
That's pretty cool, actually. When you talk about the accent, I never think about it, because I guess we're living in 2021. Things are a little bit different to what they were before. But yeah, trying to blend in a community does make sense, because you want to sort of make your life easier by making sure that you're like the other people around you when you're younger, I guess. Yeah, that's so good.
Especially as a teenager, and like, in the 70s as well, which is when South Australia was pretty backward compared to the rest of the, world, and living in the country as well for high school years. That was another challenge. And I'd never lived in the country until I moved to Australia. I always lived in the capital city, so that was a big culture shock as well. So yeah, people hadn't even heard of Finland. Yeah.
Well, we're living in the third most livable city in the world now.
Yes,
Adelaide.
exactly.
So come a long way here, right? I love it here.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, me too.
So tell me, what you're doing now, specifically, this project that you've taken up at the moment is probably going to be one of Australia's coolest, most unique projects. And I'm assuming it's also the first project like itself, running a full-on restaurant, a bar, and also a theater, if I call it in my own ways, where you're actually giving opportunities to people and artists to showcase themselves, which I think is amazing because, giving an opportunity to people who normally can't be on the top stages or in a lot of places, just giving the opportunity to them so they can actually prove themselves is amazing. It's giving back, it's trying to do something for other people. But how did you sort of come to joining Light Adelaide, and what sort of drove you towards this experience? Because it's not just a simple job you can pick up and go. It looks easy. I've been there, I've seen it, but there's a lot behind the whole concept and the ethos, right? So tell me a little bit about that.
Well, just over a year ago, I was asked to come along to a meeting where I would meet some people who are running this or about to run this amazing venue. And so I'd never met Nick and Sophie, the co-founders of Light Adelaide, until that meeting. And I thought it was just going to be a one-off. And then I got invited back to have a couple more chats with the people. And slowly, Nick kind of lured me in. And I started working as a consultant because I was still running my own business at the time, and I was really busy. I had lots of different events that I was still scheduling and working on. But it took about 6 months until he convinced me and offered me a good job, a full-time job. And it was at a time, and we'd had COVID for 7 or 8 months already, and I was feeling nervous about what was happening in my industry anyway. And I think Nick came along at the right time to offer me the job security. But also it was the project itself that I was happy to kind of give up my freelance business for, because I saw that there was going to be this enormous challenge, but very exciting kind of new things that I could put my experience into and really learn something new and be a part of something that was really different. So you're right, like there's nothing like this in Australia. So the model is a not-for-profit organisation, but it's about hospitality, it's about entertainment, it's about the art sector, all of us working together to give artists an opportunity to do new things, explore new ways of presenting their work. We've got amazing technology in the venue like no other in the country, and even some parts of the world. So it's such a unique test case, I suppose. And all of us are learning on a daily basis about what works, what doesn't work. But I love the fact that I get to be creative and utilize all of my contacts and my connections. After all these years of networking and working in the art sector, I'm finally in a position where I'm bringing all those connections together to this job, which is pretty amazing. Like after years and years of doing these isolated things, and now this is the one that's bringing it all together. So that's really exciting, and I hadn't planned that actually. So yeah.
Very nice. And I have to say, these are a couple of questions I was actually going to ask you next that you've spoken about. But when you talk about networking, I'd love to know how you network, but it's the same for me now since I've sort of moved into doing different things. I've actually been reconnecting with people that I worked with in China, Maldives, and Fiji, suddenly out of the blue. And we sort of realized that there are things that we can help each other with, and just networking with them, reconnecting with them. And you know what, I remember when I used to work at these places, I thought, hey, this is the connection that we have at work. But I never thought that it would sort of progress into another connection after all these years. And that's the best thing about meeting people, I guess. You never know when you're going to re-meet them again and how they're going to come back into your life in what sort of way as well. And you must have met so many people on the way. So I can only imagine kind of connections you made and how big your network is.
And just as a really funny connection that happened yesterday, somebody sent me a message on Facebook and said, look what I found over the weekend. And this is a woman who works in the state government sort of arts world. And I don't really see her socially. I just happen to be, you know, friends on Facebook or whatever. She had found a certificate that had my signature on it that she got when she volunteered for me 21 years ago. 20 years ago. I had not remembered that at all. And the then arts minister signed it as well. So it was the arts minister and myself who had signed this document about her volunteering for me. And I was like, wow. And now she works in the arts kind of world as well, but on a state government sort of admin level. And here I am programming like Adelaide, but we've kind of come together again. And it all goes back to 20 years ago when I was working at Carclew Youth Arts Centre. So you really don't know how those connections end up coming back to your life. So never burn a bridge. That's what I say. Never.
Never burn a bridge. Well said.
Yeah.
That's so cool. So I guess now just going back to you owning a business and then moving into what you're doing now. When you were leaving your freelance business, it's a lot for anybody to leave what they're doing, or a lot of people are trying to move into freelancing or doing their own thing versus going back into a job. Now, you're the opposite, where you had your business and then you actually moved in to take up a role at managing light in many ways. What was going through your mind? What was on the back of your mind? Did you think this may be good or this may be bad, or what was going through your mind? I'm just curious when leaving everything behind.
That's a really good question. At the time, when Nick was kind of trying to, you know, like I said, lure me to the job, I was really resisting because I didn't want to let go of my independence, and I didn't want to let go of my lifestyle that I'd created, because I was my own boss. I had my own office in the city. I could come and go as I pleased. I had a lot of work on. So it was like I had my clients that I wanted to keep working for. In fact, few of them I'd been working for 3 years. So I kind of knew what my routine was up to that point. But I think ultimately it was about what I said before about the job security that was offered. Job security, but also the chance to do something with a team again, because I was kind of working solo, and I'm very sociable, a very social kind of person. So I like working with other people that I can feed off of, and, you know, always share ideas and whatever. So it petrified me, but it also excited me to kind of let go of the business. And I thought one day, if I want to, I can go back to running my own thing again. I'm not scared about that because I've done it once now. I was more petrified leaving my full-time job at Adelaide Festival and going into freelance world, because I had no clients whatsoever. I had this really crazy courage, I suppose. I just went, no, this is the right time. I've got to do it now. And that took a lot of guts, I think. And I was pretty scared about what I was about to launch into. But yeah, going then back to a full-time job was slightly less scary, but more the challenge was different because I was letting go of something I'd built myself.
Right.
So, yeah.
Wow. I think, yeah, absolutely. When you talk about leaving something and moving to changing your industry or doing something else, I was the same as well. I was scared to start my own freelance business because I actually had no clients. So I was sort of, obviously COVID had affected my work as well, but at the same time, I wanted to sort of just move on and do my own things. I took the plunge. I struggled. I really struggled for a while, but I think it took me a while to get my feet grounded. But if that wouldn't have happened, I guess I wouldn't have been doing what I'm doing today. But in the advice of a lot of people that we see, and they're probably right, rather than me saying that, make sure you have something as a backup before you leave. It looks really easy from the other side, but if you don't have enough financial backup, if you don't have enough security, if you don't have enough to pay your rent or anything, then things can go the other way. So be a bit smart about it. I guess I jumped into it, but I learned over time. I figured my way out. But yeah, it's not easy. And to do anything, I think change is not easy, right?
No, I agree. But I feel like I'm one of those people that actually embraces change. And I like when things are probably it's bad because it creates more stress, but I think I actually like the fact that I get a chance to try something new or different. I could never stay in the same job for years and years. I'm not that person. I think the longest I've been anywhere has been 6 years, and that was Adelaide Festival. And when I hear people, when they say, oh, I've been in this job for 20 years, I think that would make me go mad, I'm sure. Unless it's a very diverse kind of job. And, you know, everyone's different, but for me, it was just another chance to see what else I can learn and what else I can do. So it's scary, but if occasionally you don't take a risk, I don't know if you learn very well or very much.
Absolutely. Well said. And again, you know, the goal of this podcast is always to inspire anybody who might watch it, you know, and there's so many different elements. I've had about 3 or 4 people who've come on the show at the moment already, and everyone's got such a different story and how they took the chance, how they sort of moved forward. And yeah, it's amazing, you know, and looking at it from your perspective as well. Again, it's a world that I don't know too much about inside how you operate, because I guess it's very different to a corporate structure. You know, as an artist, I guess you feed off people's energy, you feed off yourself how good you are or how you move. It's not about you know, getting a promotion. It's a very different world for you out there, right? So
yeah,
what I'd love to know, like, how do you look at your next move? Do you, because you don't work in somewhere they say, okay, let's promote and tomorrow, for example, right? Or let's promote the musician tomorrow. How do you network to move around, or how do you actually move around or rise up in your industry?
That's another really good question, because it is different. And I've been really lucky. I haven't had to actually apply for many jobs because I've kind of got them out of hearing about things, or someone's tapped me on the shoulder. And this is the arts industry as well, especially in South Australia, where it's quite a small industry. So I get asked all the time if I know people who might be suitable for certain jobs. So we talk to each other a lot. And that's a really key thing about the networking for people in my industry, because you need to know who's doing what and where. And I've been very fortunate just to be kind of in the eyes of people constantly. So I remind people that I exist. And if opportunities come up, they might then remember that I could be suitable for a role. So that's happened many times. And that's how my whole freelance career really started. I just got a couple of leads. I took them on, and then as soon as people found out that I was free to do freelance kind of projects and contracts, it was just word of mouth. I did not do any marketing. I didn't do any advertising. All I said was to my colleagues that I knew quite well, that if you hear of anything, let me know. And then just slowly it just started to come my way. But I think that another key thing is just to be willing to go and do the networking functions as well. You know, go and meet people that you don't think are going to be useful or even, you know, relevant. But you never know, like you said before, you know, sometimes you don't realize what connections are going to be useful eventually. So that's happened to me. Like, who would have thought I'd be creating a gala event for the Australian Dental Congress in the Adelaide Town Hall? So that was one of my jobs. Right. I've never met any dentists before, but someone just recommended me as a producer to run that event, and I met all these dentists. So you never know. It's always useful to be out there.
Just like you said before, right? That is so amazing, Anne. I love that. Yeah. So I guess So stress is part of your job, but what stress helps you sort of work better? I can figure that out, because you've got a different kind of stress, like in your profile as well. It looks all guns and glory from the other side, but then you have your own elements to deal with, and there's a lot of hiccups that can happen, ups and downs, because also you're dealing with live audiences at many occasions. But so how does stress come into play? Like, or let me put it in a better way. How do you manage stress in your work to keep performing better?
I often don't manage stress very well, actually. So I get overworked really easily, because one of the things in my line of work as a programmer, what happens is I can't stop working when I'm listening to music or when I'm watching something on on a performance live, or whether it's online or whatever, I'm constantly thinking about, oh, maybe this could fit my program, or do I like the sound of this artist, or how do I make that work in the future? So it's like learning how to switch off my brain so I can just enjoy art or enjoy music without having to think it's part of my work. So they blend very much. So it's hard for me to separate. And occasionally I put on music that I would never program, just so that I can switch off completely. And I've got a few albums that I love listening to because it's just about me. It doesn't have anything to do with my work. And that's a good thing. But it's also the timelines and the deadlines that are really stressful, especially when I run events for music industry conferences and award ceremonies or whatever. It's just the intensity just kind of goes up and up and up. Then you deliver the event or the festival, and then that stops, and then you have this dip. And that's stressful as well, because a lot of people in my industry have a serious issue with depression after events, because you build up, and you kind of run on adrenaline for sometimes months, and then you suddenly stop because it's kind of over. Yeah. However, the biggest difference I've learned already working with light is there is no dip. So the adrenaline that I've been running on is just kind of escalating, and I've had to really be conscious of the fact that I can't be in the lab 7 days a week. I can't just think about my work all the time. I have to physically remove myself from the venue and just go home and take a break, because it was becoming such a part of my life. And when we were building the venue, and I was programming in the early days, especially 6 months ago, that all I could think about was the lab, and that's not healthy. So I had to really consciously remind myself that there's more to life than your work, and I need to just consciously do some meditation, which I do now. Meditation or physical exercise, or just taking a break, coming home and watching Netflix and just looking after myself. So it's very important. But I'm learning. Even at my age still I'm learning.
You're never too old.
Never.
But it's good that you said that. And I was talking to one of my old managers as well, who was managing a couple of countries, Australia, New Zealand as well, for the hospitality chain I was working. And when I interviewed him, and one of the things I think it's always coming back to the same thing is you need to learn when to shut off and when to sort of move forward. I, for a long time, to be honest, was the same, because I was working on site for many years. Wherever I was working, I was always at work 7 days a week, morning to night. But I never realized that I guess my productivity would go down, but because I was continuously going, you kept on going. Versus the moment I moved to Australia, one of the key areas that what I focused on rather was work-life balance. I realized that you don't need to be at work 12, 13 hours every day. You can get more work done in 8 to 10 hours, being more productive. And now I try to work differently. It's not really organized because it's, there's so many elements coming across while I'm building myself up, but I make sure I take some time out. I take breaks more often than I would. Just helps me focus more. And this is something that a lot of young people, I think, are misguided about, because they think you need to keep on working hard. That's how you move forward, but it's work smart, right? I learned that in life. But work smart is better than working hard, so I agree. And I have to say also, like, having a good team around you makes such a difference as well. I'm very lucky. I've met some people over the years who I know and trust, like Kate, for example, who I'm working with. She's absolute gold, and we work really well together. And I can't remember who taught me this, but they said, when you're building a team, always find people who can do things that you don't know how to do. So all the things that you might be able to, but you find someone who's better at it at least than you are. And I thought that was a really good piece of advice, because that way you're just kind of building the skill space of your team. So you're not trying to be the boss that knows it all. It's more about, okay, well, I know how to direct a team, but I need all those parts of the team that kind of make it a one, if that makes sense. Oh, it does.
So I've had to learn. I've had to learn to recruit. Sorry.
No, go for it. It's to your point. It's what we say, right? Hire people who are smarter than you, because they're gonna do a job better than you they know things and give them the freedom, right? You don't need to micromanage anymore. They know what they have to do. You're just guiding them in the right direction, but they know what they have to do. A lot of people don't want to hire smarter people because they're scared that they might cross you or they do something. But if you're actually really thinking about it, you want to make your life easier, right? To make your life easier, you need to have the right people in the right place. I met your team as well at Light. It's an amazing bunch, very cheerful, very positive, but also very creative. And I think the biggest thing when I interacted with them was that they were quite supportive of each other. So that's where that bonding comes into place, because there's always someone looking out for you. So I think the culture that's created at where you're working is amazing as well.
And I think also when you're in a senior role and being seen as, at least as a leader, for me, what's really important is being open and be accepting of feedback as well. Like, I never pretend that I know the answer to everything. In fact, I talk to my team all the time and ask for their opinions or their ideas, because I love that. That's why I like being amongst young people, because and that's a good thing. I don't never ever feel threatened by that. I get excited about it because they give me contacts or suggestions that I haven't thought of myself. So I think that's a great thing, and hopefully my experience will give them something as well, so we can share different knowledge and different contacts, different ideas. I think that's a really, really good thing, to mix it up in your team.
Yeah, it's all a mutual benefit, right? If your goal is, I guess, to move forward, you need to sort of help each other out and move forward. End of the day, you can either look after yourself, or you can actually look at the bigger goal, which is, I guess, going to benefit you regardless of the fact, so it just makes sense.
Yeah,
right.
Totally. Yeah.
So this is something I really wanted to ask you, right? I was so curious, like, do you look back at your career or whatever you've done so far and say, hey, what if I didn't get into what I'm doing now? What if you were planning to do something else, but you moved to the current career that you're doing, which is into music and arts? Have you ever looked back at your journey and said, what if I changed, things could have been better or worse? Or has that ever come to your mind?
Yeah. Once I thought I was going to move to Sydney and I was going to, start my life in Sydney. This was in my mid-20s. And I thought that was going to be it. And literally, that didn't last very long, only a few weeks, because then I met my now husband and I ended up staying here. But it was like that moment of, I'm young, I'm free, I can do anything, I'll take on Sydney. And I had no idea what work I was going to do or whatever. And then a few years later, I thought, wonder if I stayed in Sydney, what would have happened? But I actually think I would have struggled, because one of the best things about Adelaide has been the fact that it's a small enough place where you get to know people easier. You can build your community, and I feel a part of a community here. Whereas I think Sydney, I would have really struggled to find that kind of space where I felt comfortable with people. It's hard to kind of really know, and I'll never really know, but that's about the only other time, because I've always said regret is the worst possible waste of energy, because if you regret something, you're just wasting it on something that you're wishing you'd done, whereas you should just put that energy towards something that you could do. So I've never understood living in the past or worrying about something that you didn't do or you did do, because it's done. Like, move on and think about your future and put energy into that. That's my piece of advice today.
That is awesome. I'm going to use that as a post. I'm going to rap for you, because that is amazing what you just said. True.
It's true. Yeah. So many people waste too much time on worrying about what happened to them when they were younger, or, they wish they'd taken on different things. But you only make a good decision, or the best decision that you can at the time. Like, I wish I'd known when I was 30 what I know now, but that's not how life works. So you just have to take it on when it comes to you.
You're here for a reason, because you made that decision, right? And that's just how it is. That it couldn't have been another way. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's true.
Cool. Yeah. All right. So I'm gonna now actually wanted to know something, like, tell me something real about you learning something from a failure, because I'm sure you failed many times. It's never straight up. But what was your biggest failure, and what was your biggest takeaway or learning from that specific failure?
Failures are always really hard because at the time you think that's the end of your life. You think that you can't move past it, and when I think about failures, they might not be big for anybody else, but in your own head, even the smallest mistake can feel like it's life-changing. And when I've had those moments where I think I've either programmed something that wasn't ideal, or I've said something to a person I feel bad about, or I can't think of like one particular sort of earth-shattering thing, but what I've also learned from those is if you put yourself in that moment, how would you do it differently if you had another opportunity? What do you learn from that? Is it about, okay, you need to think about how you behave yourself, or was it circumstances that took you to that moment? It may not be your fault at all, and things might be out of your control. So maybe it's okay to not be so hard on yourself as well. Like if you learn something from it and then you try and do things differently the next time, then I think that's the best thing you can do. You can never change, as I said before, about what you've already done. But if you can, keep reevaluating and maybe even reflecting on what's happened, I think that's healthy to do. And just have a think about the next time, if that situation arises, how you would approach it differently. Hopefully for the better. But you might make the same mistake twice, who knows? I have.
I think we all have, but I don't know who said it, but they say like failure is probably just something that tells you that you can start again, but better, because you've done that already. Now you know what not to do. So it's just making you smarter when you start again. That's a really good view. I like your viewpoint on that. The way you put it in words is much better than I could have, but very nice.
It actually helped that I wrote all these answers down before. Like I thought about, some things that I'd like to share with you. So anyway, you can edit this bit out.
No, that's fine. We'll keep it the way it is. So is there a goal in mind for you ultimately, like whether it's a year from now or future? Is there something you're working towards ultimately?
I think not so much as a goal as a job that I'd like to go for next. What I would love to be able to be a part of is a journey to help the music industry and the arts industry go through a bit of recovery. I want to be part of that that pathway that hopefully we can create opportunities for artists. And maybe one day in the future, someone's going to say, oh yeah, remember Anne Wiberg, she was part of that. And even if it's a tiny little thing for one artist that I can help along the way, that would make me feel really good. If I'm really honest, that would be a great satisfaction for me, to be able to have something meaningful that I'm doing now that pays off. So it's not just about having a job that, gives me a wage, but it's like being remembered for something that you're doing that I guess helps somebody else's journey as well. I guess that's really important to me, for sure. I can't do a job just for the sake of doing a job. It has to have another meaning. And when I see artists on stage and I see how happy they are and how grateful they are for the opportunity to perform, and they've said it to me before, like, thank God we can, get on stage again. I get such a buzz out of that. And, I might have worked a 12-hour day. It doesn't matter, because I'm seeing how the audience is loving it and the artist is gaining something out of that audience response, and, people are smiling. That makes me happy.
I love that. You're probably, my whole inspiration for starting the podcast was, if I can inspire one person on the way, I think I've done what I need to do to start, and I'm doing the same thing, what you're looking forward to as well. It's just changing someone's life, even if it's one, is quite a big thing, The whole thing is, if you can get them in a mindset to move forward or get them out of a rut, you've done what you have to do, right? And I think all of us come from the same situation where we've been inspired, we've seen someone else who's helped us on the way. So it's about giving back, I guess. But also I think it's making a difference and making an impact. I always live by the fact that when I grow older or when I move forward, it's all about making an impact. There's nothing else. If you're just living life, that's great. But, can you make an impact? Can you influence people? Can you sort of, how do you sort of make people move forward? How can you better their life? And it's not about the money always, you know, sometimes it's about the connection, sometimes about the communication, sometimes just the support that people need, or even the guidance. Yeah. So that is really awesome on you. Good on you for doing that.
Thank you. Well, I don't even know how much of that happens. You know, that's the other thing I was going to say, that we both might have that goal, but you don't even know how much of that happens just by chance. A few years ago, I was at the Adelaide Entertainment Centre, and this girl ran towards me, and at first I kind of was taken aback. Oh, why is she running to me? She literally jumped at me and gave me this big hug, and I didn't know who she was at first. And she said, Anne, I've been wanting to tell you for 10 years. And I said, what do you mean? And she reminded me of the project that she came along to years ago. And she said, it was you that made me go to drama classes at university. And I have no recollection of that. She said, you supported me and you helped me. And I honestly cannot remember. I couldn't even then remember who that person was, but I made an impression on her life. And I thought, you never know who that might happen with again. And isn't that great that those things can just happen out there, and you don't need to know about it all, but just know that you're probably doing more than you think you are.
Absolutely. That's an amazing story. And you look back and, you know, these are the things that make life, right? It's not just about doing what you're doing. It's just getting the small elements and stories and experiences all together. That's what life is all about. How do you move forward? What's behind? These are things that really cheer you up, and you know you're moving forward with that. That's amazing. But yeah, that is awesome, man. Before we close this, I just want to ask one thing. Now, there might be people obviously watching this podcast, maybe someone from your network, musicians, artists who are sort of trying to come up as well. What is the one advice you can give to the next generation of people, artists, entrepreneurs, leaders, or anybody coming up? What is that one advice you can say to move forward?
This is a long sentence probably, so it's probably more than one thing, but I'd say be brave. Don't be scared to take risks. Believe in kind of what you enjoy doing, and don't waste time doing stuff that you don't enjoy. I've definitely been in jobs many times where I've got to a point where I thought, why am I here? I'm unhappy. I don't want to come to work. You know, that scenario that we're all very familiar with, I'm sure. And learning that it's not worth it. Life's too short, as I said. If you're not happy somewhere, change it. Or if you can't change it, then change your attitude about it. Otherwise, it's just going to be creating more stress. So yeah, believe in what you enjoy and try and be happy in that. Or be brave and just kind of take that plunge like we've talked about earlier. Be open to new ideas and just go for it.
I love that. Well, thank you so
easy
much
to say, so hard to do.
It's been a pretty interesting interview, rather a podcast. And look, we've spoken a few times before. We've met a few times before as well, at different parts. So that's why one of the reasons I wanted to get you onto my podcast, because, you know, you've got this very awesome energy and vibe, and I've seen the way your team reacts to you and other people as well react to you. So I always thought there was a story behind you, and there was a lot of things to you which we don't come to know, right? Because we're so busy in our own lives. And I think whenever we've met 2-3 times, we've probably just spoken for a minute or two. But what really inspired me to get you on was, I remember I was at the lab for the ceremony that you had done, where you were giving a speech. And I heard you talk about you leaving your freelance business to come and join Light. I don't know if it was the opening ceremony of Light or what exactly it was, so that sort of really got me thinking that there's definitely something about her. There's a story behind her which I really want to discover and ask her. So I started sort of connecting with you more and discovering. But a lot of things I discovered today about you, I've never known about you. So thank you so much for sort of inspiring us as well, you know, and letting us know your story from your edge. And I'm sure we're gonna, in time, see you doing something very similar, hopefully, you know, coming online and sharing your experiences and helping people on the way as well. So thank you so much again. We look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. It's been really great to chat to you. Thank you.
My pleasure.